Let's do this one about Tucker Carlson. Basically, now deciding like I need to get some anti-vax audience. This is just see him like completely constructing his audience this way. It's fascinating. Um, Here is Tucker Carlson last night. I'm both ignoring what the CDC has advised for people who have been vaccinated and also ignoring the basic notion of public health.
The federal health authorities also recommend that you continue to wear your mask when you go outside. How long will this continue? Well, according to Yahoo News, experts say it's, quote, not entirely clear when it will be considered okay for people who are fully vaccinated to stop wearing masks. At some point, no one's asking this, but everyone should be. What is this about? If vaccines work, why are vaccinated people still banned from living normal lives? Honestly, what's the answer to that? It doesn't make any sense at all. If the vaccine is effective, there is no reason for people who have received the vaccine to wear masks or avoid physical contact. So maybe it doesn't work and they're simply not telling you that. Well, you hate to think that, especially if you've gotten 2 shots. But what's the other potential explanation? We can't think of one. We know the Prime Minister of Canada has decided, after thinking about it a lot, that vaccines just don't work. And we know that because he said it out loud.
First off, I mean, he can't be this stupid. He's really just ignoring it. I mean, we know that vaccinations, 95% effective, and there's some variants, but let's just 95% effective in keeping you out of the hospital and being ill, 90% from keeping you from getting COVID at all. But the fact of the matter is that's not 100%. And you need to get your community to reach a certain level of vaccination where all of these people walking around with 90% immunity begins to snuff out the spread of the vaccination. And I think why you would require people to wear masks, broadly speaking, is because you also want a message that it's not over, that you still need to be careful until we get to a point where deaths have gone below a certain amount. We still have, hundreds, if not, close to 1,000 people dying a day from this in this country. And so you do this until you're at, as a society, not just individuals having, some type of immunity, or otherwise you would have said to people who got COVID 6 months ago, you no longer have to wear a mask. It's the same theory. And he must know this. He's just out there basically promoting this notion that the vaccinations are for no reason whatsoever. It's
Alex Jones shit, really. Like
totally.
This idea, if they can make you wear a mask, they can control you. Like you are controlled. If you have to go to work in order to shelter yourself and feed yourself and provide the basics of necessity, folks, you are controlled. And it's just who's controlling you. It's not the people that want you to wear a mask. It's, this entire society that wants to exploit you.
There's an audience for this now on the right. I mean, and it's growing. It's why Trump didn't want people to know he got a shot before he left office.
Yeah.
The responsible thing to do would have been, hey, I mean, this was documented. This was his reasoning to appeal to the anti-vax crowd. And the reason Tucker isn't a dummy is because he recognizes that this is a new frontier for them, tapping into the growing conspiratorial thinking in different realms. I mean, the right was always conspiratorial, as we documented with the Boehner clip vis-a-vis Obama's birthplace. But this is going to be the new one. This is going to be the new area.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't think this is specifically Tucker Carlson taking the turn towards general anti-vaxxerism. Just more like Emma said, this is a new frontier for Republicans to carve out more of the population, and make them less and less capable of integrating with people who, are, I don't want to say science believing, but are more aligned with the general belief that vaccinations or that we have to live as a society. I think where he's getting purchased in people's heads is that there was, this implicit argument out there that once you got vaccinated personally, that you might be able to go back to quote unquote normal, whatever that looked like for you. And, that appealed to a lot of people. That was a sort of way it was sold, I think, had to be sold maybe to get people to get vaccinated at rates that we need to get them vaccinated at. But the unfortunate reality about that is that I think it leaves space for people like Tucker Carlson to enter into the conversation. Well, like, weren't you told that you could go back to normal? But like, you really weren't, though.
No,
like, that's the thing.
And we do have a situation now where the CDC says if you're in a room with a vaccinated person and you're vaccinated, you can go mask off. CDC is now saying that you can go and visit if your grandparents are vaccinated, you can take your kids to see them. I mean, we're not at normal now, of course, because there's still, and maybe it's just a left-wing plot in some way to basically have all these hundreds of people die a day from COVID. But the fact is, it's continuing on. I mean, in Michigan, you've got hospitals filling up so quickly that they're terrified. They're terrified there.
Yeah, no, I mean, the COVID is still ravaging the country. And I mean, I think if you were actually interested in like, keeping track of the way COVID's been ravaging the country and like the science overarching throughout the time, the idea that once you got vaccinated, that you would need to wait another 2 weeks or 3 weeks for that to be fully effective, that you wouldn't be able to start, eating indoors in max occupancy restaurants is not news to you. But I think that for the casual COVID news kind of reviewer, there was this go back to normal. We're going to go back to normal by Valentine's Day. We're going to open up movie theaters. We're going to do, X, Y, and Z. And so I think it was easier for a lot of people
to said specifically July 4th, right? I mean, he, and then they all took issue with that because he's talking, how dare you take the July 4th out of your mouth? So
it's warm now, Sam. It's warm outside. It's sunny now. People sort of, are matching the science to the way they want it to be, in terms of the way the weather is. And I think that it just so happens to overlap with a lot of cultural, underpinning issues that we have about individualism. So it becomes like, well, if I'm vaccinated, okay, I get that the community might be in danger, that the server might be in danger. But if I'm vaccinated, am I still in danger? And there is, I think, a layer of this too that Tucker Carlson's drawing on, that's like, well, we can't really say that you're not 100% in danger even if you're vaccinated. And so like, we have a relatively science illiterate culture that is still privy to a lot of like scientific information and data and like the veneer of science. So it becomes hard to necessarily parse out what's going on. So I can't necessarily blame people for thinking that things would go back to normal, however they were defining it, because that was the thing people were saying. And, it, unfortunately, like I said, it just creates room for people who are like anti-vaxxers or just looking to like, promote a personal brand that it's anti-vax adjacent to like come in there and go like, well, you see, they were lying. And it's like, well, no, not really.
But there is a certain amount when there is a difference between public health and personal health, right? I mean, in terms of the way you approach it, because on public health, it is not best for public health to come out and say that you're going to return to normal, even if it's the case that as the individual, you probably could go through your daily, you could walk down the street and not wear a mask and largely be protected. But from a public health perspective, if you are signifying in public that this is over, it's going to change the behavior of people around you. And this is the dilemma. And that's why it's actually like, there is a dilemma that is, I think, inescapable in the delta between public health and personal health and private health. And that is why it's so reprehensible for someone like Tucker Carlson, who has this type of audience, to exploit that, basically arbitrage that difference between personal health and public health, right? And that is what is so despicable and reprehensible about it, is that it is using a weakness that is inherent in living in a society and exploiting it.
Absolutely. And I mean, you see the same kind of thing in these sort of articles that come out about the individual people who have gotten vaccinated, but still contract COVID under some sort of like, freak conditions. And I think what makes those sorts of arguments, whether from, as explicitly reprehensible as Carlson's are, or just like hey, isn't this one guy getting COVID after getting the second dose 2 weeks later, like a thing that happened, is that because we have such a hard time with, just the idea of the public sector, people have a very skewed, are just incapable of having a healthy idea of what public health looks like. So it becomes, well, if getting the vaccine doesn't help me personally, how can it possibly be, the moral thing to do? Or like, how can I wear these masks? We just have a difficult conversation, I think, with the idea of the commons in this country.
Yeah.
Strategically, it's been made very difficult. So the idea of public health just becomes a thing that is very hard to communicate to people, because it's like, well, yeah, get vaccinated, but like, what if it makes me sick? What if it doesn't help me? What if it's like, okay, well,
I think people like Tucker are the reason why they paused the J&J. I think there's a couple of reasons associated with why they paused the J&J, but the fact of the matter is that you have 1 out of a million people getting a blood clot. It is probably, we don't know. It's conceivable that it's a function of the vaccine. It's more likely it's a function of things like birth control or just coincidence. You have a 1 in 500,000 chance of getting struck by lightning, literally, versus a 1 in 1 million chance of getting a blood clot, if we even knew that it was causally associated with the vaccination. I'm convinced that part of the reason why they paused it was because it is a rear guard move, like protecting their flank essentially from people like Tucker, who are trying to find anything that would indicate this vaccine program is just sort of playing loose and fast with American lives. That is, and fortunately, I think that we have the supply of Pfizer and Moderna in most places, and I think we're moving into that era of like, now it's not a question of supply; it's more a question of demand, because there are people who I think are listening to Tucker and go like, well, this is, why else? If it doesn't make you safe, then they're just doing this to blankety blank, to control you or to put the 5G chip in you.